Welcome to Ask a Therapist, a show where qualified therapists stop by to answer all your questions. Hey you, welcome to another episode of Ask a Therapist. Thank you so much for being part of this brand new podcast show of ours. My name is Adele Onyango and I'll be your host. For every season in this podcast, we will have a different therapist answering your questions. And being the first season, we have Daisy, who is the lead counsellor at ConvoCare, who is answering all your questions this season. Before I tell you more about Daisy, how can you get your questions to her? If you check out the show notes, there is a form to fill where you can drop your question, even anonymously. So that's where to put your questions and then stay listening for Daisy's answer to them. In this episode, just a bit of a trigger warning. Issues around sexual violence do come up, which I know can be quite difficult to listen to. So if you're in that season where that's something you can't listen to right now, you may want to give this particular episode a pass. So a bit about Daisy. She runs ConvoCare, which is an amazing organization making wellness resources like therapy more accessible to us. Accessible both in proximity, accessible in quality, but also in cost. They offer a range of services from group therapy sessions, online therapy, couple therapy, and of course, individual therapy. If you want to book a one-on-one therapy session with ConvoCare, or maybe particularly with Daisy, all you have to do is give them a call or send them an email. The number is 0703 975 216, and the email is in the show notes. And the number as well, actually. Also in the show notes is their social media platforms, because they also create fantastic content around mental health advocacy and awareness. So just in case you want to follow a page that actually enriches you, which I think you should, you may want to give them a follow on Instagram. And now, let's get right into answering all your questions. We are in another episode of Ask a Therapist, and we have Daisy with us. And this episode, the questions that were sent in were quite heavy. The first one is, why is it that I thought I'd healed from hurt that was inflicted on me by my mother, but sometimes I resent her when I remember she didn't protect me from trauma inflicted by other family members?
Wow. So healing is a journey, and it is a process. It's a step-by-step process. You could think that you have actually healed, but when there is a trigger, you find yourself getting back to where you were when it began. That does not mean that there is no progress. It only means that you're a trigger away from healing. So it is possible that you could feel resentment because your mom was not there for you. Does not mean that you've not healed. Does not mean that your healing journey has not kick-started. Only means that you got triggered, and you can continue by seeking support and actually looking at this trigger as it is. What is it about this situation made me feel this way? Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like maybe when you get triggered that either your healing has been interrupted or it has regressed. Maybe you can unpack that for us.
Okay. So a trigger usually makes you feel like you're back to the situation or to whatever the trauma maybe that happened. Does not mean that you're not healed or you've not kickstarted your process. When you experience a trigger, you come up with a different coping mechanism for it. So when this trigger ever happens again, one, you'll be self-aware. And you'll also know how to cope with it differently. Does not in any way mean that you're not healing. It only means that there was a trigger that made you go back, but it is possible for you to continue depending on how you're going to pick it up from there.
And how would you advise someone who feels like they're the question that was sent in, like their parents, mother or father, didn't protect them as a child from specific things? How would you advise them to maybe have that conversation with their parents,
Okay.
if they space for that.
Okay. So conversations are allowed. However, you might not get what you're looking for by seeking, especially in our African setup, you might not get what you're looking for. So it's very important that you seek the healing journey for yourself. It is possible for you to heal and move on without actually having to communicate or talk or have an exchange with your parent. The inner child, as a child, you depended on your parents for your needs, for physical support, for emotional regulation. But as an adult, you're fully responsible. You're fully responsible for how you feel. You're fully responsible for who you are. So it is actually possible for you to seek the healing journey by yourself.
That's wonderful. And like, what issues come up for adults who, when as children, didn't feel protected by their parents? How does it manifest in the way we feel or the way we act, or like what harmful cycles can we find ourselves in?
Okay. So not being protected means that your sense of security is shaken. So it also causes you to develop trust issues and might be a reason for you to be anxiously attached or have an insecure attachment style with your partner. So having trust issues, there's also hypervigilance, where there is a heightened sense of alertness. You constantly feel like people will hurt you because you depended on this parent to protect you and they didn't. So you have this hypervigilance, the alertness, where you're scared that something bad is going to happen. Also, it could help make you develop unhealthy ways of thinking, where you feel like external events are personal attacks. So you find yourself personalizing issues. And so if anyone has experienced this, they actually do need support to navigate it. Yeah.
The next question that we received is, can a near rape incident by your dad affect your ability to fully immerse yourself in relationships? I meet the nicest men, but the slightest ick and I'm out.
That's for sure. Because as a child, you, like I've said, you depend on your parents to give you everything, your physical, emotional needs. And the failure to do so makes you unable to trust people. And so it is possible that especially having a dad wound will affect how you relate with other people. Now, having a dad who actually did not protect you or is the one who actually attacked you makes you develop trust issues. It is hard for you to find someone and actually believe that they can love you because you depended on your father's love as a child. So you find it difficult for you to actually trust people and feel like they can love you without actually wanting something from you. That said, it is possible to heal that wound. It is possible to find healing for yourself. It's not that all is lost.
And so how then should that person approach relationships?
Okay. So it's important, number one, to have open communication. The main thing with unsecure attachment styles is that they attract each other. So you'll find that if you're anxious, most times you're in relationships with avoidance. As you're clingy, the avoidant is wanting their independence. So communicating that I could perhaps be attached to you unsecurely, that could mean that you two are attached to me unsecurely, then both of you actually working towards it. So if I'm clingy, it means that I need constant reassurance. If my partner knows this, he can try and give me constant reassurance when I need it. When I notice that my partner needs his space, it is possible for me to allow him space because I've noticed that he's avoidant. So having this open communication, first off, when you're in a relationship, also working on your inner beliefs, where because you perhaps feel like people will always hurt you, it is important that you seek support so that you work on this inner belief and actually change your perception of the world.
I hope this episode gave you insights that can help you on your healing journey. Remember to send in your questions via our question form. There's a link to it in the show notes so that Daisy can answer them, and we can make sure that we're giving you all the support you need on your healing journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star rating because you know we deserve it. And most importantly, share it with your friends and hey, even your enemies. Everybody needs wellness. That's all for this episode. If you have a question to ask a therapist, please drop it in our question form. A link to it is in the show notes. Catch you next week for the next episode of Ask a Therapist.